Starting.
Awesome. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Lady Liberty League. Today is Sunday, July 27th, and I am Sue Richko, one of the founders, along with one of my co-founders, Tom Early. And I don't see Laura today, but want to just mention that Laura is another co-founder. And Lady Liberty League is a group organized to supply verified sources of quality information and quality expert speakers on the issues that matter most to us currently in 2025. So, without further ado, I am going to introduce our next guest speaker. Today, we have Rachel Coyle. And if you ever wonder how things really work inside the Columbus Statehouse, Rachel is the expert, the unofficial expert. As I describe her, she is a civic expert, a history expert, and a current event expert. So she has a perfect triad marriage of all three areas. Rachel is the policy director at Honesty for Education, programs director at Ohioans Against Extremism, and co-founder of How Things Work at the State House. She brings a wealth of experience from her work as a communications director for both gubernatorial and state Senate campaigns. She was the press secretary for the Ohio Democratic Party and a staffer for the Ohio Senate Democratic Caucus. She also was or is a grassroots mobilizer with the ACLU of Ohio and a communication director for Innovation Ohio. Rachel holds a BA in psychology and political science from the Ohio State University and a master's in political communications from American University. And we are excited to have Rachel present today on what we called Columbus Confidential, how laws are really made. So, with that, oh, and I'm sorry, let me just give some brief ground rules. We have our amazing co-founder and moderator, Tom Early. So as Rachel shares her wealth of information with all of us and you start to formulate questions, please throw them in the chat and we will get to them after she is finished presenting. So without further ado, Rachel, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much, and thank
You're
you for
welcome.
inviting me. Yes. Thank you all for coming on a Sunday too. We appreciate that. All right. So I'm going to do the fun tech part now and share my screen here. And we should be good. All right. And like Sue said, there's questions I'm sure are going to come, so just throw them in the chat and I will gladly stay on as long as we need to answer these questions for you all. So very excited to do this presentation for you today. I've been giving some version of this training for about nearly a decade at this point. It has shifted dramatically as the political atmosphere has shifted. It also has evolved during COVID. We learned how to do it online, which has actually been really helpful ever since. So excited to give you this presentation today. So some basic introductions. One, don't worry about memorizing anything or writing anything down. All the websites, all the slides, all the links that I talk about will come to you in an email afterwards. I'll send it all to Sue and then she can send it out to you all. So everything is coming to you. Just sit back and enjoy. But also, don't worry if you are new to this space or if you have mostly focused on national politics before. That is very, very common. I give this presentation to all skill levels. So I give this presentation to people who don't know that we have a state house. And I say that because I want you to know that there are no dumb questions. I guarantee if you have a question, half the room has the same one. So throw it in the chat and know that other people will be grateful that you asked it. But also, if you are someone who's been really active at the state level, hopefully you'll get some tips and tricks out of today as well. All right, so what we're going to talk about some basics like terms, thing you need to know that I will say that are just helpful to know the definitions. I'll talk about mostly how a bill becomes a law in Ohio, the actual process, and then where you can insert yourself into that process. Give you a couple resources, which I will email to you, and a couple key bills and policies to know. Although thankfully we are in a summer break right now, so that slide section is shorter, and then we'll do Q&A. Okay, so this is the most important slide in the presentation. I put this in every training I give. I'm going to throw a ton of information at you today, but the only thing I absolutely need you to remember is how much power you have at the state level. It is unbelievable how few people pay attention to state government and state politics. So that means it doesn't take very many of us at all to make a lot of noise at the state level. The legislators at the state level are not used to pushback or feedback. They are really not used to having to deal with any number of citizens being involved. So it really gives you a lot of power with just a small number of people. Of course, that also means that if you don't use your voice, you don't take action at the state level, it only takes a few people with really dangerous ideas to get their stuff across the finish line. So you really have to use your power, or else someone else is going to use theirs. So actually, as one of the things I've been doing the last couple years, I've been trying to help folks understand just how much power they have at the state level. I've been partnering with this new group called Ohioans Against Extremism to build these trackers where we show people throughout the process how much power they have, how many bills and policies they can actually get accomplished. This was our first one. This was last year. Our lame duck tracker, which we'll talk about here, what lame duck means, but it was basically the last part of last year. We built this tracker, lameduck.wtf, the website name makes me smile, and we followed bills throughout the state house for several months, and we would update this document every day with new calls to action and emails to send and phone numbers to call and when testimony was needed, and then we tracked the outcome of each of the bills. And you can see here, this is a ton of text, but everything marked in red on the right there is a bill we supported that ended up becoming law at the end of last year. So you can see we made a huge, significant impact on the state. And you may never hear about any of these bills in the news because state politics doesn't get as much news coverage as it should. But the goal, if you're in politics for the right reason, is to make the world a better place. And we improve people's lives with these bills. And that is the point. I'll mention two that I'm really, really proud of. One was SB 198, which is going to help provide state ID cards and documentation for inmates in jails and prisons. So that means when these folks get out of jail or prison, they're going to be able to find work. They're going to be able to find housing. They're going to be able to vote and participate in society, which is going to make it less likely that they end up back in jail or prison. So that's huge for inmates. It's huge for their loved ones. It's also big for taxpayers because it's going to save Ohioans money to have fewer people moving in and out of the prison system all the time with a simple fix like helping people get ID cards. Another bill I'm really proud of that passed last year is called Madeline's Law. It's SB 157. It's going to require insurance companies to cover hearing aids for kids. Before this law was passed, it actually was considered a cosmetic fix to get hearing aids in Ohio, which is gross. So now anyone 18 and under, their insurance will be required to cover hearing aids for those people, which is going to improve just countless lives. We'll never know how many people's lives were improved because they had the ability to hear and to communicate more easily. So just little things that at the state level that we can do to make Ohio a better place. So now we're going to talk through a couple basics, just like terms you need to know that I might throw out there that'll be important. The first one is General Assembly, or GA. So this refers to the State House, but it also refers to the 2-year period they operated. That is important. So any bill that's introduced in Ohio only has a 2-year window to go through the whole process. House, Senate, governor, signed into law. And even if it gets most of the way there, but doesn't get signed into law by the end of the 2 years, it'll die and have to be reintroduced from square one the next term. So that's why we end up with this next term, which is lame duck. So at the end of every 2 years, there is a period where all the legislators know that all their bills are about to die. and they run around like crazy trying to pass everything they can before the end of the 2 years. It is madness. It's called lame duck, and they know it's going to be chaos. So they tend to hold their most controversial stuff for lame duck because they know some things are going to slip through the cracks. It's very, very frustrating. It also happens that Ohio has the worst possible time for our lame duck session. Ours happens in November and December of even numbered years. So, right after major federal elections. Our last lame duck cycle was right after the presidential election last year. And everybody in the world wanted to go home and spend time with their loved ones and definitely not think about politics. And I had to be begging people to come to the State House with me. So if you haven't yet made your 2026 holiday plans, please plan to pay attention to politics in December, and then we can all hang out in January of 27. The next term to know is session. So it has two meanings. One is the time of year when the legislators are working. Technically, in Ohio, it's a part-time job. And then it also refers to when they're physically at the House or Senate chambers voting on bills. Another term you need to know in Ohio is supermajority. So I give this presentation in a lot of rooms. I always tell people I don't care which party it is or which party you are. Supermajorities are bad. They are bad for America. They're bad for democracy. They're bad for the checks and balances that we all learned about in junior high. Because what it means is that Ohio has a Republican supermajority. We also have a Republican trifecta, so all three branches of government. But the supermajority means there's so many Republicans in the Ohio House and Senate that they control the state. They have more power than the other branches of government. They can force things into law all by themselves, which takes away the checks and balances that are supposed to prevent extremist bills from moving forward. If Governor DeWine, who is also Republican, decides to be more moderate or decides to veto something because he doesn't like it, doesn't think it's good for the state, there are enough Republicans in the state house to override that veto and force something into law all by themselves. That is too much power for one branch of government to have. It leads to bills that nobody wanted, including your Republican friends and neighbors did not ask for these things, but there's no one to stop the legislators. So breaking through that supermajority should be a priority for everyone, no matter their party. So currently in Ohio, these are our leaders of the state house. They are leaders for this GA, this General Assembly. So they'll be in power until the end of 2026. And the two at the top are the Republicans. That's the Senate president on the left there. But the guy I really want you to focus on is the man at the top right. That is the Speaker of the Ohio House, Matt Huffman. So Matt Huffman is the most powerful person in Ohio. This guy controls the state. Every bill that passes in the next 2 years will be his. Everything that does not pass that will be his decision. He controls Ohio with a level of power we have not seen in a long time. And he is really good at wielding this power. He's amassed it for years, and he's very ruthless in using his power. One example I'll give you is usually the House Republican caucus raises money into the House Republican caucus fund. The last year or so, they've been mostly raising money into the Matt Huffman fund, and then he kind of doles it out as he sees fit. So just little ways of making even his own colleagues, his Republican colleagues, do what he wants. He also had the Ohio House pass some rules that gave him even more power. So they passed rules giving Matt Huffman total control over all the committee assignments. So if the Democrats are too good at asking questions, they could technically, like, they could be removed. If a Republican bothers or makes him mad, he could remove them from committee. Just a lot of power over who gets to be in charge of the legislation process. He also gave himself the power to fire other people's staff. So, just a little thing, again, that he can hold over his colleagues to make them do what he wants. Matt Huffman also had the House pass rules that have been very troubling for transparency. So, for us paying attention and following along and organizing around the State House, it's harder for us to do that now. One example is that the House Democrats sometimes end up walking onto the House floor not knowing what they're going to be voting on because he got rid of the rule that you have to tell people 24 hours in advance what's going to be on the floor the next day. So he's also been, I will say, doing some lying. So there is a rule that is not actually a rule that was never voted on. No one wrote it down. It was not officially part of the rules package that Matt Huffman has just been telling the press is a new rule, which is that he is going to be banning people from standing outside the House chambers during votes. Again, not an official rule. What he's been doing is he has just been increasing the police presence outside the House chamber during votes to try and physically intimidate people into not being present. It is very clear, like a lot of people in power, he does not want Ohioans to participate in the lawmaking process. So, what he's hoping this will do is that people will not show up to the state house. They will feel like they don't have access, so they won't come, when actually the opposite needs to be the case. We need to show up more often in larger numbers and be louder than ever before. We might not be able to stand right outside the House chambers anymore, but we can stand one room over, which means we're just going to have to be louder. We really do need to show the response to someone who is so controlling with so much power is that there needs to be a large public reaction to this, where more people come to the state house and show up and voice their opinions more often. The great thing is, though, it is incredibly easy, again, to make noise at the state level. So these are actual articles and photos from just a couple months ago from a bill that you've likely heard about at this point, Senate Bill 1. We call it the Higher Education Destruction Act. It is radically altering how higher education looks in our state. You've seen a lot of programs going away and student organizations going away and scholarship programs and graduation programs that lift up individual communities of students. All of that goes back to SB 1. So this bill was announced in July, I think it was January, maybe early February of this year. And they had a press conference to announce the bill at the State House. And about 25 students showed up to the State House to protest outside that press conference. And they didn't go into the press conference, they didn't disrupt it. They stood outside in the hall with signs and shirts, and they were chanting. And the politicians didn't like it because you could hear their chanting on the TV cameras. So it was ruining the vibe. And so they sent out police presence, you're sensing a theme, to try and physically intimidate the students into leaving the state house. They did not leave. And what happened instead was the press came and they interviewed the students and they took photos of them and they wrote all these articles that were not just about the bill, they were about the bill and all the people who hate it. So we changed the entire narrative around Senate Bill 1 from the first day with literally just 25 human beings showing up to the state house. It is that easy to change the whole narrative. And it changes the narrative not just that day, but every time reporters wrote about SB1 ever again throughout the process, they would pull these photos back up. They needed a visual. They would pull back up the quotes from the kids. It really does make a massive impact with just a small number of people showing up and being loud at the state level. So this has actually become a big part of our strategy at how things work at the State House, where everybody knows if you're in politics for the right reason, your goal is to make good stuff happen. And if you can't do that, you want to stop bad things from happening. But a lot of people forget the third part, which is that you have to make sure people know who is doing the bad thing, who is hurting them, who is taking away programs that they use, who is making things more expensive. We have to be constantly year round. It cannot just be around election time. We have to be making sure people know who is hurting them. And we call it losing loudly. And it's a very important thing to remember, especially when you're having political policy fights that you know you're likely to lose. Because a lot of times you ask yourself, like, why do I keep doing this if the bill is just going to pass? And this is one of the reasons. Because over time, we need to build up a public memory of these people so that eventually, after many months, even years, people will go to the ballot and they will see Matt Huffman's name and they will think, I am not sure I like that guy. And they might not even know why, but they will know they've heard his name for years over and over again in a negative connotation. It cannot just be done around elections. But eventually, we will create a public memory by doing this losing loudly that will have an impact. Another thing that is a very important part of our strategy is that a reminder that politics is mostly just about psychology. Politicians are people. They want to feel powerful, they want to feel cool, they want to feel popular. And so that's why they do things to limit public testimony. They surround themselves with people who agree with them. They avoid town halls because they don't want to face the reality of the fact that they are hurting people with their policies. They don't want to face the fact that people don't like them. So, things that we can do to disrupt that bubble they've created for themselves are much more effective than they should be. Direct confrontation works. Things like directly, like tagging people on social media so they have to see what you post about them. When I'm in like Lima, where Matt Huffman is from, I tell people that it needs to be that his neighbors are mad at him. He needs to go to the grocery store and have somebody be like, "Hey, aren't you that guy that made everything more expensive?" Finding ways to make them realize that their communities, that they are being, people are realizing that they are the ones doing the harm is impactful. It's why the people who go to the state house with cameras and film the legislators in the hallway asking them questions, why that has such an impact, because they're having a psychological, a real human response to that. It also means that being the squeaky wheel is very effective. We, as human beings, we get annoyed. We don't want to deal with someone coming back or talking to us or calling us over and over and over again. And eventually you can wear people down. That is a lot of times our strategy. So, one example I'll give: when I worked at the State House, we had a person who would call constantly about a very narrow question. He wanted tax credits for film producers, and he would call just every couple days over and over again. And everyone hated taking the call because they knew what he was calling about. Long story short, we have tax credits for movie producers now in Ohio. It really is, being the squeaky wheel is effective. Basically, you want to be a problem. If you're having a bad day and you're feeling like there's no point to doing this work, one of the things I like to tell myself is that these people don't deserve an easy time if they're trying to hurt my community, if they're trying to hurt people I care about. They should have a stressful day. They should have to go home at night and have an extra stiff drink because I exist. And sometimes that is enough. So, a lot of what we do is just reminding people that politicians are people and they will have human responses. So now we're going to talk through, now that you've heard about our strategy, we're going to talk through how a bill actually becomes a law in Ohio and where you can be part of that process. So this is a very simple graphic, just showing you that when a bill becomes a law in Ohio, it has to go through very similar to the federal government. Very similar. There is a Senate and there is a House and there is a white man who signs stuff into law. That is the process. And it can usually come from either the House or the Senate, but a bill is supposed to go through both before it gets to whoever signs it into law. That is important because a lot of times in the press, you'll see an article saying, like, bill passes Ohio Senate. And it sounds like the process is over. It sounds like the bill is going to become law when actually there may be a whole other step. Okay, so this is the actual process. Step one, obviously, your bill is introduced. Usually it can come from the House or the Senate. Sometimes it can actually come from both. They introduce a bill once in the House and once in the Senate as like a show of force to show that there's a ton of support behind it. But only one of the bills would actually have to become law for the thing to happen. This next part trips people up a lot. So bills will keep their same number throughout the full 2-year term. So Senate Bill 1, which we just talked about, stayed Senate Bill 1 the whole time. It never changed names. Even when it went over into the House, it stayed Senate Bill 1. So what that does is it helps us understand quickly how far a bill has come in the process. If you see a Senate bill in the House, you know it's already passed the Senate. So it never changes its number. So, step two, once your bill is introduced, it then gets a committee assignment. So, a committee is a group of a few legislators who get together and they talk about bills in a certain issue area. So, we have a health committee, we have an education committee, we have an aging committee, and an agriculture committee. Anything you could care about, there is a committee connected to it, and they're focused on bills around that issue. Then this is actually where most of the magic happens in lawmaking. This is actually the best thing you can do in Ohio policy is make sure you're following the committees themselves. One of the things you can do is follow by being placed on the committee notice list, which is literally just an email list that they will send out emails to anytime they're going to be meeting. Anytime they're having hearings on bills, they will contact the notice list. So I'm going to send you a document telling you how to sign up for the committee notice lists, but I'm actually going to walk you through it right now as well because it really helps to have seen it. So this is a website I will send you. This is legislature.ohio.gov. The committees are all listed there. I'm going to click on the Senate committees first. You can see they're all listed alphabetical order. I highly recommend just picking the ones that interest you personally and signing up for them. Or if you all are a group who meets a lot, you could assign committees to different people and then folks can report back on what's going on in their committee. But I am going to click on the Finance Committee here. You can see the members are listed there. The chair of the committee is always listed first. They are the most powerful person in the committee. They decide all the rules. They decide which bills move and which bills die. They decide everything. But they're also the person on the Senate side that you're going to contact to get on that committee notice list. So I'm going to click on Jerry Serino's face here. Takes you to his page. You can see on the bottom left there is his contact information. You can call or email his office and just say, please add me to the Senate Finance Notice list. And then you will start getting emails anytime the committee's meeting. You'll know which bills are moving. That is the best and fastest way to help take action around individual bills. The House has made it way easier for us. I don't know why the Senate hasn't figured this out. Maybe they did and they don't want us on the committee notice list. I don't know. But the House made it easier. So it's the same website, legislature.ohio.gov. I'm going to click on House committees. You can see all the committees listed there. I'm going to click on Finance. Oh, they have a button. I don't know why the Senate hasn't figured this out, but the House has made it so easy. You can just click on any committee that interests you. You don't have to contact the chair. You can just sign yourself up using the mailing list button. All right. So step 3, once your bill has a committee assignment, it's supposed to start getting hearings. But this does not always happen, especially for Democrats, but it can happen to anyone. Sometimes a bill will sit in a committee for 2 years and then it dies. So one of the best things that you can do as an advocate is actually call and demand hearings for bills you like. It is remarkable because politics is psychology. It is remarkable how often you will get a bill hearing because they want to shut you up because they're tired of you calling. And that matters. Even if you don't get your bill all the way through the whole process, this time around, anytime you get a hearing is a victory, is a success. It is a more opportunity for you to get public awareness and attention around your bill. If you get that second hearing, that supporter hearing, you get to bring in experts and professionals in the field to talk about why the bill would improve the state. You get to bring in parents and kids with emotional stories to tell to talk about why the bill would improve their lives. And you get to have the press there to cover it, to talk about, to do news stories and pieces in the local news, TV news. It really does drastically improve your chances of increasing public interest in your issue, getting more pressure to get the bill passed. Another thing you can do on the other side of that coin is you can call and demand that they stop moving bills that you don't like. It is again remarkable how often they will cancel a bill hearing because they don't want to deal with us. They don't want to deal with protesters. They don't want to deal with a large room full of angry citizens. They are hoping that if they cancel a hearing for a couple weeks, that we will forget or that we will lose interest or that we will move on to another topic and they will be able to pass the bill with less public pushback. So anytime you get a bill canceled or bill hearing canceled is a victory. Sometimes that is literally our strategy to cancel a bill hearing 1 week at a time for 2 years, and sometimes it works. So yes, I'm saying call a lot. Obviously, there are many ways to contact the State House. You can email them, you can tweet at them. I'm sorry, Twitter is absolutely where they are. All your legislators are on Twitter. It is the best way to reach them. You can send them letters, you can meet with them, but calling is incredibly impactful. It's not like calling Congress. There's no fancy computer system where you don't have to tell them your zip code and then you won't get kicked out if you're calling the wrong Congress member. It is very simplistic. It is you and a staffer on the phone. So your goal is to take up the staffer's time. You want at the end of the day, again, psychology, you want that staffer to go to their boss and say, "Oh my God, I got nothing done today because everyone hates that education bill." That is a victory because their boss will hear that and they will know that that is what the public is calling about. You will get that bill in that staffer's head, in the legislator's head. That is a victory. You also want to remember that you are not talking to the legislator, so you're talking to their staff. You want to be nice. You want to be nice to the staff. It is incredibly important to build a positive working relationship with the staff. And it's very easy to do when you call because there are so few people working at the state house. Each state rep only has one paid staffer in their office. Each state senator only has two. So if you call a lot, you're going to get the same person over and over again. If you're nice to them, you can get a lot of things from them. Sometimes staffers will call us and give us inside information. They'll say, "Hey, I know you care about this bill. I just heard in the hall it's about to move next week. You might want to get your people together." Because that's how few people call the state house. They literally not only remember you, they remember you and the stuff you're calling about. The staffers can also get you bills introduced. They can get you meetings with their boss. It's a valuable, valuable relationship if you take the time to build it up. And another reason to call your legislators is that they will absolutely get your voicemails. So, unlike Congress, again, there is only one phone line per legislator. That means you and the lobbyists and the senators are calling the same phone number. They have to listen to their voicemails. What you want to do is you want to call and leave your contact information. Ask for a call back. Say, "I want to know what the legislator thinks about this bill, how they're going to vote. Here is my number. Give me a call back." And a lot of times you will get a call back because maybe only 5, 10 people left a phone number that day. So they could call you on their drive home. Of course, it's also a great way to test whether or not you have a responsive legislator because some of them don't care enough to do that. So it's a great way of seeing if you have someone who cares about their constituents. Another great thing about calling at the state level is you can call people who do not represent you, and you should. So we can call committee chairs, for example, and say, "I'm calling about bill in your committee," even if that committee chair is not your individual legislator. You can do that. It still has the same impact. So you may get a staffer who's feeling like a jerk that day who asked for your zip code, but there's no reason for them to ask it. There's nowhere they write it down. There's nowhere they put it. And you're still having the same impact on that staffer where at the end of the day, they will remember that everybody called about that one bill and they will mention that to their boss. But of course, it is obviously most powerful, most impactful to call your own legislator. So if you are calling yours, you want to mention it. You want to say, "This is my zip code. I live in your district, in this community." And that gives extra weight to your call. So another thing that we can do as Ohioans, we can come in and testify for or against bills in the state house, in these committees. The goal is to testify in person. It is very helpful to have that visual of a packed committee room. The press loves that. They pay more attention to bills with large committee room presences. You also can get on TV. There will be TV cameras in there, which helps, again, spread the word about your bill or your issue. It can potentially lead to a good back and forth with the legislators. So it's very, very helpful to testify in person. But we make it hard. We tend to have committees at like 10 o'clock in the morning on Wednesdays. And I can't tell you how long the hearing's going to go. I can only tell you when it starts. So you have to be able to give up a solid chunk of your day. Not everyone has the ability to do that. So we also have the option to testify written only in Ohio, which is still an official part of the process. Your testimony will still be in the public record. It'll still be part of the bill documentation. It'll still be shareable online and on social media. But it is just, I can't promise you that the legislators will read it. So it really does help to do extra things with your written testimony, like share it online or email it to all the committee members and say, "Hey, I submitted this testimony, wanted to make sure you saw it." Just do a little extra thing, but it still does matter to do that written only testimony. So this is what a committee notice looks like. If you sign up for those notices, this is the email you will get. It's important to know that you can only submit testimony once your bill has been scheduled for a hearing, and they're going to accept your type of testimony. You can't just send in testimony whenever you want. You are waiting for this notice to come out saying, hey, HB 70 is having a hearing. I want to be an opponent on that bill. Now I've seen this testimony or this hearing announcement. Now I can send in my testimony. So you have to wait for that to happen for you to send in, which is why, again, so important to be on those committee notice email lists. The great thing, though, is it is incredibly simple to submit testimony. The entire process for the House is on this one slide here. So you get that notice, you write your testimony, you email your testimony to the committee chair 24 hours before the hearing. And you have to do that even if you're doing in-person testimony. You have to send it in advance. And you also send them a witness slip, which is just basic information about yourself, like if you're a lobbyist or if you represent an organization, that kind of thing. Those it's normally they will accept any witness slip, so I will send you a blank one after today's event. But if they have a special witness slip that they require, they will send it out attached to their committee notice email. That's the whole process. That is literally it. You email your testimony and your witness slip to the chair 24 hours before the hearing. You have just participated in Ohio government. The Senate process is actually easier now because we broke the Senate during Senate Bill 1. They had to change their entire submission process because too many people submitted opponent testimony against that bill, which I consider a victory. So, step one, you write your testimony. Step two, you upload your testimony directly to the committee website rather than emailing it 24 hours before the hearing. And you don't have to deal with the witness slip because you can just fill out the witness info on the website when you upload it. So it's actually a better process, and I'm kind of hoping the House figures it out too. But both of these are so simple that we should be submitting testimony all the time. I actually tell groups you can have like a social event, like a testimony party where you get together and you hang out and you have wine and food, and then maybe you also all write a paragraph and then you go back to hanging out together, and it can be that simple, that easy. Because it's another great thing about submitting testimony, the shorter the better, a lot of the time. You do not have to feel like you are writing a term paper. You can write just a few sentences, and that is totally valid. A few paragraphs is perfect. Most of the lobbyists who are submitting testimony will be doing just a few paragraphs as well. So it does not have to take you hours and hours and hours to do. It can if you want. Your testimony can say whatever you want, but you will very likely get stopped. They will stop you at a couple minutes if you're testifying in person. So you might as well make it short and get the stuff you really want to say on paper right at the beginning. So this is another thing that I will send you. This is a testimony template, which is just a basic thing laying out how to format your testimony so that you can feel confident that you and the lobbyists and the professionals are submitting and formatting your testimony exactly the same way. So this will just help you feel confident that you're doing it right. So I will send you this after today's presentation. And then this slide is a reminder to me to talk about the fact that we have had a lot more trouble testifying the last couple of years. We have had legislators try to make it harder to do because it's powerful and the press covers it and it helps get the word out. So they've been trying to make it harder for us to testify. We've started seeing things like invite only testimony or limited number of testimonies allowed, or just they will cut off testimony at 2 hours, no matter how many people are in the room to talk. Very, very frustrating trend. And at the moment, we don't know a legal option to make this stop. So what we've figured out is that the best solution is, again, psychology, is to be annoying, is to be a problem, is to be more obnoxious if they try to prevent us from testifying than we would have been if they just let us talk. So this is an actual example of that from a couple years ago. These folks showed up to testify against a bill that would drastically increase penalties for protesting at pipelines, like fracking site protests. These folks who showed up to testify against that bill, they were told that only a few people were going to be allowed to testify that day. And they did not just go home quietly like the politicians were hoping. They went out into the halls of the state house and they protested. And it was loud and they were cheering and chanting and the press came running because the press loves a ruckus. It breaks up their day. And so they came running to see what was going on. They interviewed these folks, they took pictures of them, and they ended up writing all these articles about this bill that wouldn't have been written if they had just let the people talk. That is the goal. We have to let the politicians know that we will be more of a problem, more annoying if they try to stop us from participating in government. So, one resource that we have that I want to make sure you know about is ohiochannel.org, which is completely free. You can watch all the House and Senate sessions and all the committee hearings live online. It is wonderful. It's a great resource. And all the videos are archived on the website for later, so you can watch anytime. And this makes great social media content. So I will send you a document today that helps you pull video clips from Ohio Channel. If you testify or your friend testifies or you see something in committee that you wish other people knew about, you can pull it off the website and post it on TikTok, Instagram. It makes great social media content. All right, so everything we just talked about was the committee process because that is again where the magic happens is the committees. But sometimes a bill actually passes out of committee, and if that happens, it needs to get a full floor vote. So if it was in a House committee, it needs to receive a vote by the full House. Some bills will actually get through committee and never get to the House floor or the Senate floor. They just live in limbo for 2 years and then they die. But if a bill does get to the floor, it usually passes the chamber. They don't tend to bring bills to the floor if they don't think they have the votes. So after the bill passes that one chamber, the House or the Senate, it then goes to the other chamber and does the whole thing again. Gets a new committee assignment, has more hearings. You could come in and testify for your bill twice, once in the House, once in the Senate. There are several ways that politicians have been trying to skip parts of this process that we can talk about if you'd like, but this is the traditional process. All right, so now I'm going to give you a couple resources, talk to you about a couple bills, and then we'll take you questions. All right, so the first one is again legislature.ohio.gov. A lot of times people want to know how to see what their politicians are up to, and this is a great way to do that. So this is the legislation tab. I'm going to click on search legislation. So you can search by bills if you know the bill number and you just want to look up the bill. But you can also search by primary sponsor. So you click on a legislator's name and it'll show you any bill that they have introduced, sponsored over the last during this 2 year period. Or you can actually look back, see that General Assembly tab there. You can look back to previous years. Or you can also look up by co-sponsor, where you click on a legislator's name and it'll show you any bill that they cared enough about that they signed their name onto it. So they probably didn't write the bill, but they put their name onto it so they can be held accountable for that bill too. These are great ways to see what your legislators are doing, what they're introducing, what they're co-sponsoring. But again, you can just look by bill number. So I'm going to do that real fast here to show you what it looks like and show you another great resource that we have. So I typed in a bill number there. You can see the bill came up and I'm going to click on it. This is what a bill page looks like. You can see there's a little graphic showing you how far in the process the bill is. But the thing I really want to show you is the documents tab there at the top left. I'm going to click on that. So a lot of times it can be very frustrating to try and read a full bill or get your friends to read a full bill because they can be very intimidating. They can be hundreds of pages long and they're written by lawyers and for lawyers. So it is very complex. We have the ability to also show people what's in a bill using the bill analysis. It is wonderful. It is a bullet point breakdown, nonpartisan, that shows you what the bill would do, but it's written for everyday people. It is written for non-legislators to understand. It's a great resource to help your community understand what a bill would do without forcing them to read a really intimidating bill. So this is what it looks like. They also update the analysis every time the bill changes, which is great. So this is a bill analysis. bullet point breakdown, nonpartisan, just really digestible, wonderful, wonderful resource that we have available. Okay, so another thing, obviously, I've been telling you a lot of information. It, I'm sure, is very overwhelming. One of the great things that you can do to help narrow down all the madness is just pick a couple advocacy organizations in Ohio that are doing this work and follow them. Sign up for their emails, follow them on social media. These groups, we are so blessed in Ohio to have just so many incredible advocacy organizations. These photos are just a tiny sampling. There are so many of them. And I will send you the larger list after today's event. But most of them are nonpartisan. Many of them are focused on a certain issue. So if you're really passionate about education, for example, you can just follow the ed group groups. They will tell you when testimony is needed. They will tell you when ties, because there's so much happening. And I will start your list. You can pick whichever ones you want. They will help. I appear to be frozen. Am I frozen for you all? Oh, there we go. We got it.
You froze again, Rachel.
There's a thunderstorm and I'm worried my internet is going out. Let's try this.
Sometimes the weather can be tricky.
Go
Mhm.
back. I apologize.
That's okay. And feel free, Rachel, if you would like for the Q&A portion to call in from your phone, if that helps with the storm rolling in.
We've certainly had a ton of information given to us today. I'm pretty excited to look at all of these options, not to mention maybe getting in contact with more legislators than I have in the past, especially knowing maybe they want to hear from me. The squeaky wheel theory, of course.
So I am looking to see if she's trying to join by phone really quick so we can get to some questions because I know she is amazing and full of quality information. And I actually, even though I've heard Rachel speak before, I have new questions for her. So hopefully she's able to join. Let me check my phone and see if she is having any difficulty trying to call in.
Definitely one of those things we also learned from the pandemic is sometimes virtual meetings have some hiccups.
Yes. 100%.
That's why it's so important to invest in our infrastructure. Smile.
A shameless ad.
Ah, you know,
Here she comes.
it's what I love to invest in as a taxpayer, you know. I would love to see my monies go towards that.
There's Rachel.
All right, let me share my screen, do these last couple
Great.
slides. There is a massive thunderstorm going on outside.
Oh,
Oh boy.
Fun. All right, here we go. Sorry about that little gap there.
you're fine. We were just commenting how much we love your information. You're
Oh, good.
absolutely fantastic. Yes.
Okay. Last couple slides here, folks. We can get through it before the thunder kicks out my, or lightning kick out my internet. So now we're going to talk through just a couple bills very quickly that are moving in the State House. We are currently in a legislative break, which is nice, and I hope it continues. So we are a couple bills I want you to know about, though, that are very likely to move in the fall. Are one is very similar to SB1, but is very exclusively focused on banning diversity, equity, and inclusion at the K-12 level. And it does not include any definitions of any of those words. So there's a lot of concern about what this will cover. There's a lot of concern that it could include IEPs, students who need extra time or extra assistance or different types of assistance in learning. There's concern it'll impact getting different groups of teachers or different varieties of teachers, helping veterans become teachers, helping low income folks become teachers, helping people with disabilities become teachers. There's a lot of concern about what this will include and who it will impact. It is a fascinating bill for messaging because the title is literally banning diversity, equity, and inclusion, writing out the whole words. It's a bold statement, and I think we can really hold people accountable for being against diversity with this bill. And this one is expected to move, so we want to hit it really hard. If you or your organization are interested, Honesty for Ohio Education that I work with we have a whole subcommittee now set up to help fight this bill, and we are working on toolkits and resources to help people fight this one. So if you're interested, let me know, and happy to add you to that. Another bill you need to know about that is very, very likely to move in the fall is the Ohio version of the SAVE Act. So that federal bill you've probably heard about that's going to make it way harder to register to vote and vote. There is an Ohio version that is moving. It's actually moving, I think, faster than the one in Congress. So this bill has a ton of things that it would do. We've got a whole bit.ly link to help walk you through what it would do and take action. But I want to tell you a couple pieces about it. One, it would require what's called documentary proof of citizenship, which means in order to prove you're a citizen to register to vote, you would have to have so much documentation and paperwork that it would be very hard to have voter registration drives. It would be very hard for Ohioans to walk around with a voter reg clipboard at fairs and events. It would be harder for a lot more people to use the online voter registration system because it would just be so cumbersome to have the process in place to deal with all the paperwork. Most people will have to register to vote at the BMV or their county board of elections. So it really will make it very, very hard to do grassroots voter registration. Another piece of this that's very concerning is similar to the federal part, where it's going to require an exact match between your ID and your voter address or your voter information. And the state will be required to be constantly checking for what they call mismatches. So there's a major fear that things like if your middle initial is on one document and not on the other, you could be flagged. If you have moved, if you've ever changed your name, if you write Mike instead of Michael on one of your documentations, you could be flagged as a mismatch. There's just a ton of concern that it will end up where hundreds of thousands of additional Ohioans will end up having to vote provisionally, and they won't even know until they go in to vote. And then if you don't update your documentation, cure your ballot within a few days, your entire voter registration will be canceled. So there's just a significant fears about what this will lead to in terms of provisional voting and ballots being thrown out. And that's just two of the big pieces of this bill. So this one is moving. We have to be very proactive in fighting this bill. Those are the two I want to mention, but I also want to show you our new tracker for this GA, this 2-year term, which is ohiobills.wtf. And I update it constantly. I update it several times a week during the legislative process. And it is not fancy. It's a Google Doc, but basically what it is it'll help you pick out things to take action on. If you are feeling overwhelmed and you just want me to tell you what your priorities should be, I list some priorities at the top there, or you can go through and pick the ones that are most important to your group. I'm going to show you how it works here. I'm going to click on the Ohio version of the SAVE Act, and it'll take you lower down in the document. It lists out things like actions to take. It lists scripts and phone numbers. It'll also tell you where in the process the bill is. It'll list articles and information about the bill. Just really want to make this easy for folks. We want people to be able to take action when they have a whole life. They've got kids and jobs and bills to pay, but you can take an action quickly. That is our goal. All right. And if any of this is interested you, I am on every social media platform that exists at this point. I will find you and make you care about the State House. I now have a Substack as well. So if you are not on social media and you want to receive emails, that is actually a really great way to support me, is because it helps me actually make money doing this, which would be cool. So whatever social media platform you're on, whatever you use, my goal is to make it easy for you to take action at the state level. We post very simple calls to action. We list the phone numbers, we list the legislators, we give you a sentence to say, and we try to make it so that you have access to the information that you need to take action at the state level. And then if you're interested in supporting the group that funds all those trackers, that is Ohioans Against Extremism. They are wonderful. They're the ones that help me do this, the tracker work. And they're new. They're a 501c4, so they are allowed to be more direct and blunt than some of the other legislation or other groups, because the other groups often have to go in and politely meet with politicians and try to get stuff done. OAE does not have to do that. So they get to be a little bit more direct online, which is lovely. And then again, I just threw a ton of stuff at you. So if you remember nothing else, I need you to remember how much power you have at the state level. Anything you do at the state level is more than was happening before. If you share an article about state politics on social media, you might be the only person in your whole network sharing a state politics article that week. Everybody else is sharing the same article about Donald Trump, and you're going to be the person in your network with new, interesting information to share about something people haven't heard of before. It's actually an incredibly powerful act to share state level news. It's rough out there. But also, when I worked at the State House, we used to go hours in between a single constituent phone call. So if you call, you might be the reason that phone isn't sitting dead. It is so important. And that if you remember nothing else and you remember your power, then I will feel like I was a success today. So now I'm going to pop back in and answer any questions you all have. And I know we're at 2, but I'll gladly stay on if you're able to. I'm happy to as well.
Rachel, I definitely have the time. I was able to compile a bunch of questions in the chat.
Sweet.
I would love to get to those, but first, Sue, she has been really excited to throw in her thoughts as well. So I just wanted to throw it to her first before we get to this litany of questions.
So again, at the risk of sounding redundant, I just have to say how much I value your work and your efforts and your knowledge base and your intellect, because you really are a quality individual who's helping all of us to get more involved. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
There's just so much. It's such a it's such dense quality information that as you're talking, I am trying to remember everything I wanted to either comment on or question, and it's almost impossible. But I'll narrow it down to just I want to just support something that you had briefly injected in about the police presence in the
Yes.
State House. I went back in March to testify as an opponent of SB 1. I did the process, that we are all called to do, and I submitted ahead of time to Rep. Tom Young. He chaired the committee, and I sat in the vault for, my gosh, what felt like forever, to have them just say, we are only accepting proponent testimony today. And he looked at me and kind of shook his head. No, like, you're not going to get the airtime to speak. And so that frustration point was definitely felt, because SB1 is a disgusting destruction to so many areas of education and the workers. I felt that personally, and it's just super important that people continue on, with their efforts and not let that, defeat you. And I hear what you're saying, like losing loudly, and it makes sense. But afterwards, it was the day they were taking vote. So I went to go into the gallery to be part of all of it. And the heavy police presence was at the base of the stairwell, and they weren't allowing anyone else in. So I took I guess the next best alternative, and I went in back to the vault with some of my friends, and we sat and watched it live as it was happening on the TV that they run. But there definitely is a very obvious initiative to keep all of us out of not only the voting in the gallery, but the committee meetings as well, and from speaking. Another part, and sorry, because I just get really excited about your presentation,
That's awesome.
but it was obvious to me listening to the proponent testimony that some of the students who were testifying in favor of SB1 all were handed the same script. And it's just so very disappointing to me to solicit young minds like that for an agenda and to have them do your bidding for something that inadvertently hurts all of us in Ohio.
And I will say they didn't have any students testifying against that bill for the first couple months, and the legislators got called out on it. So they went and found a couple students. It was pretty entertaining to watch that. That probably, so that was like the last day you said that
It
was when they had their
was.
students. Yep.
Yes, and it was obvious. I know I'm sure if you weren't there in the State House with us somewhere watching, you were watching from afar, but it was a very obvious script and they were nervous. And I don't begrudge the students at
Oh,
all. I begrudge the folks who put them up to that without them fully understanding what they were saying or the ramifications moving forward.
but it does show how important testimony is for getting the word out because they don't want it to happen. If they didn't think it was meaningful, they wouldn't have any reason to stop it. And it's just, I wish, I don't know.
A
I wish
hundred
everyone
percent.
knew. If we could get large numbers of people at the State House, I think things would be very different.
Well, I was excited though too that at least my letter is part of the record now, right?
Yes.
So you did say that, and that resonated with me because, I had to take that, concession that, well, at least it's documented and it's noted. And then a real quick other comment I just wanted to make, and I will pass it over to Tom for the questions in the chat. But you brought up the people who came to oppose the bill that would stop protest to
Mhm.
fracking and fracking sites. And it's interesting to me, just for anyone listening to understand that Brian Chavez, who is a rep somewhere in one of the counties in Southern Ohio, he was appointed in 2023 and he actually owns a fracking company.
Wow.
And it was interesting to me, although his fracking company, which I think is like Reno Oil and something or other, um, they're not the ones fracking in Salt Fork State Park. However, it was shortly after that appointment that we were allowed to now frack in a state park, which is just it blows my mind, all of the work that our, leaders had done at the federal level and the state level prior to this, and just watching it be undone right in front of
Mhm.
our eyes. And so yeah, that was my only two comments, and I don't want to hog up any more time.
Hardly hogging it up here. These are super important aspects of like real life examples of how we're able or sometimes prohibited from
Mhm.
influencing the entire process when our legislators seemingly make up the rules on who
They
can
do.
and cannot and how we can speak up in these different ways, especially when it comes to that officer presence in the hallways, outside the legislative chambers, who is allowed to protest and in what way. Like it's an odd thing to hear, be like, sorry, we can only hear bill pro testimony at this time. I was like, what does that mean? Is there
Mhm.
a day for against testimony? Because I usually there
They
probably is.
should, but some days they have more testimony days for the ones they want to hear, you'll notice. So you have to be, yeah.
Yeah, I can see how that goes. One of the very first questions that came up when you had the lame duck website come up and you're tracking all of the bills, I know there's usually a large push like at the end of the session or like most recently our budget bill, right? Because by law, right, it has to be enacted by the end of June.
Mhm.
Um, in the same way that some legislators push to have their important bills cleaned up, do you also see other bills introduced just for a show? Like, hey, I need to get this out here, but I know it isn't going anywhere. But now, for example, I have introduced the Eliminate Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Act. Does that actually go anywhere, or is it now just proof, hey, I did something and that goes somewhere? Where does that fall into politics versus actual um there's action I would need to take as a constituent?
That's a great question. And it's unfortunately the answer is sometimes a bill is just for show and sometimes it's moving. And you really have to just that's a great place where following the advocacy organizations is really helpful because they have been around long enough that they can help you figure out which ones are going to move and which won't. But yes, absolutely. We often have legislators introduce bills because they need to message about the bill. One of the bills I'm hopeful is like that is the bill that would ban and criminalize with a felony abortion in Ohio. That bill, I'm hoping, is unlikely to move, but is a messaging point. So that's one of those ones where you have to watch it just in case. But there are also bills where a couple years ago I would have told you they were messaging bills and now they are moving. For example, the bills to have Ohio sign on for a constitutional convention where the states get together and rewrite the US Constitution. That those bills have been around for a decade. And I used to laugh at them and now they're moving. So we are in a place now where more of the bills are likely to move forward than previous cycles. That was a long answer, but
No,
yeah.
it's okay. It's an interesting thing, right? Things that we never would have dreamed about being like, oh,
Hmm.
this is crazy. Like, of
Hmm.
course we're not debating this, and seeing it a decade later, it's in the real lexicon of things that
It
we're
is.
debating. It's so interesting. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Just to get to the top of the questions here, you did mention a lot of ways that we can influence state politics.
Mhm.
What is the most impactful way to do it? Is it a phone call? Is it showing up? Is it an email? Is it just voting? I don't. What is our best way?
At the state level, I have two answers. One is calling, absolutely calling. We talked about like this getting to know the staff is really helpful, getting in their heads is really helpful. The other thing, unfortunately, is Twitter. It's terrible. But this week alone, two of the most powerful legislators in the state house have tweeted outrageous things at me, and I have used that for messaging the rest of the week. So it is they are sitting on Twitter and they respond. So those two phone calls to the legislative offices, getting to know those staffers, and then and Twitter, if you can stomach it, which I don't blame you if you can't.
It's an interesting. I never would have thought that Twitter is still that impactful.
Yeah, it's
At
also where all the
least,
reporters are, interestingly, in Ohio. Their
okay.
reporters go on different platforms, but that's the one where most of the state house news will drop the fastest.
Following up on that own
Mhm.
question, right? Is there a requirement for anyone to respond when you reach out?
There is not. So some legislators are great about it. Some legislators take constituent services really seriously, and
Mhm.
others will literally tell their staff to not answer the phone ever. And Matt Huffman is one of those people who does not care about what we think. So he is someone we have to influence in other ways, like getting it's like Matt Huffman he showed weakness this past week when he couldn't get people to come to the state house to override those three vetoes he wanted overridden. That was one of the first times I've seen him look beatable. And so we influence him by influencing his coworkers. We get his Republican colleagues to stand up to him, and that is how we get to him, unfortunately. I wish his staff was more responsive, but they do not appear to be.
Is the staff being responsive a reflection of the legislator or
Yes.
a reflection of the staff itself?
Usually it's the legislator instructing the staff to prioritize or not constituent messages. Sometimes legislators will literally say like your first duty is to answer every email, and sometimes they tell them not to answer the phone.
Okay, interesting. That's
Yep.
good to know. I know you mentioned briefly how the House Speaker has a lot of authority in all staffing for each of the members, right?
Yep.
Regardless of the party. So uh, I understand, like, it could be a tricky situation if they're just choosing to or not to respond.
We're also in an interesting place right now where the House Speaker controls the Senate in a way that usually the House doesn't control the Senate, because Matt Huffman was Senate president before this. And he grooming is the only word for this. He was grooming Rob McCauley, the current Senate president, to become his successor. So Matt Huffman really controls both chambers at this point, which is not how it normally operates.
It sounds problematic
It does.
at the moment. I get it. When we're looking for those independent bodies, and like you said, the trifecta that the single political party has had for 20 plus years, 30
Mm,
years now, I think we're looking at maybe since the 90s. We've had
yeah.
there's one switch maybe around 2010, I think
Yep.
is
The Ohio Senate has been controlled by Republicans since before I was born. 1985 was the last time the Democrats were in charge of the Ohio Senate. And yes, the House was a couple years right around the Obama years where the Democrats controlled the House. And other than that, it's been fully Republican trifecta.
so something appears to be dysfunctional, and maybe in how we expected it to work.
Mhm.
Um, One logistical question that came up was when you were talking about subscribing to committees,
Yes.
um, is that something that needs to be redone every session? Do you just get dropped from it? Do they lose your name? How does that work?
Yes. So unfortunately, the committee leadership changes every 2 years, every session. So every 2 years, we have to resubscribe to all the committee notice lists. It's just like part of my life every January, every 2 Januaries, every even numbered year, January. Yeah.
I see Sue has her hand up. She's got some thoughts for sure.
Yes, I know. I don't want to inject in before you're completed with your thought because it is valued information, again, as I keep stating. But I will say, as a city council member, the committees do matter, and the committees can be held hostage, and you can be retaliated against based on votes, or if you refuse to be whipped in any kind of legislation, you definitely can lose some important committee assignments. That's all level of government. And the 24-hour rule that you stated is being ignored. It is super important for any legislator, whether you're like me at the municipal level or if you're at county, state level, certainly federal level, to have the information in front of you in enough time to do all of the research that you need to do, or comparisons, or to tap into areas of expertise, because you cover such a wide gamut of areas. You can't be proficient on everything, so you have to have that time. And if you get legislation and you don't have that time to do it, and you're called to vote on it, it certainly is something that, again, I'm going to go to what Tom had said, problematic,
Mhm.
um, all levels of government. And I did want to also quickly comment on the Convention of States. I mean, we are only what, like 15, maybe less states away from having, that Convention of States to alter our Constitution, which I'm with you. You would think that it's just a messaging piece at some point until it starts happening, and then another state ticks in, and another and another and another, until we're getting closer and closer, dangerously close
Mhm.
to that. Very uncomfortable.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
it's
absolutely. Some of the
please.
committee rules are not based on trying to keep people from participating. Some of them, like sending your testimony in advance, it just helps them track how many people are coming in. And you don't have to, I will say, you don't have to read your testimony word for word, whatever you sent in. You can say, my testimony is in front of you. I will now just talk you through a couple of the main points, and that is totally acceptable. So yes, absolutely. Some of the rules are for the legislators' sanity
Yes.
rather than try to hold us down.
I did get a notice popped up that we only have a couple seconds left, and it disappeared on me. I'm trying to find it so I can extend if we need to, but if it hangs up, I apologize.
But you can also email me questions if there are some. I can't see them because I had to log out for that minute. But if you want to email me questions, I'm happy to answer those too.
In a follow-up to that committee question,
Mhm.
are there resources to guide people who want to testify? You mentioned one rule where it's not a rule. I'm not exactly sure. You
Mhm.
give your testimony and then you can kind of highlight it. What if you go totally off script? Is there
Yeah.
a coaching thing for that? Be like, this was my testimony, but I actually want to say this today. And can they stop you? Like, can you just say it? You get a few minutes and that's it?
I have, so it changes committee to committee because every chair can do whatever they want. But I have little bit.ly links that I'm putting in the chat that are like lay out the committee, the testimony process. And then I also have, if you all enjoyed today's presentation, I have one on committee testimony exclusively that goes into more depth. But yeah, let
I,
me put these in the
it
chat here.
seems like a very interesting way to get involved in ways that maybe that goes beyond just voting or getting a petition, showing up to these different rallies, a way to be present at our state capitol, especially when most of our presence here is in Northeast Ohio.
Hmm.
So it's a little bit more of an effort than if we lived in Columbus personally. But
Yeah.
I found that very interesting, and maybe it's something we could explore as another way we can be involved.
I would love that. Yeah, and you can make it fun. You can all get together and like have events where you just hang out and then you all write a paragraph or two and each submit it, and that's 8, 10 people testifying, um, which would be incredible. Because a lot of times the legislators and the press pay attention to the number of testimonies, even if they're mostly written. SB1 is an example. We had nearly 2,000 people submit opponent testimony and about 34 supporters. And the press wrote articles about the drastic difference in opponent versus supporters.
I do want to put in a shameless plug too, because you have fantastic through Honesty for Education. You
Yes.
have fantastic lunch and learns. And so if the people listening sign up, they're typically Fridays, right? If I
Mhm.
remember right. I haven't been on one for quite a while because of work, but I enjoyed them immensely because you talk about all things education in Ohio and items to watch for sure.
Yes, and honesty is just, oh my gosh, they're incredible. If you are interested in local education advocacy, they have their honesty teams now where they teach people how to like go to their school board meetings and speak up as a normal parent. So it's not just Moms for Liberty at the school board meetings. They've got a school board alliance. So if you know someone who's on a school board, they like have people get together and work together on policies. It's a wonderful organization.
Mhm.
I can share some of those links in the chat too.
Thank you.
Rachel, I think that is pretty good for our time together here. I am really grateful for your expertise, your presentation, the clarity in which you provide how bills get passed and how we can impact those. Do you have any parting words of advice to our members on what it means to be involved and how you view the future of Ohio politics?
Just that one, remember that everything is coming to you in an email. So don't feel stressed about pulling all these links. But also, we are in a strange time right now where a lot of what we do is not about getting a giant bill passed, it's about getting little victories. And that matters too. So, like anything that you do is still important. Even if we're going to lose some of these fights, it's still worth having them.
Honestly, I think that's what we're here for. Those little victories. So all of those are little steps towards the
Mhm.
future that I hope we're all working towards together. So thanks for being a part of that, and thanks for sharing your own work with us. I think it'll help. It inspires me just a little. So I'm really grateful to see how I can get involved a bit more, and grateful that you're here with us today. So
Thank
thank
you
you.
all so much. I appreciate you. I appreciate you spending your Sunday with me and putting up with my internet going out and everything else.
We will post this discussion on YouTube. We'll share it with everyone, and we'll share all of your handouts and links with our members as well. We're
Wonderful.
growing. It looks like we're close to about 130 members now, so we're going to continue to blast that out, and we're really excited to see where we go as an organization here. So thank you again for your time, Sue. Thank you for the lovely introduction of Rachel. We will meet again next Sunday at 1 o'clock, and be on the lookout for our newsletter and email and links. And thank you all for your time. I appreciate it.